In this lesson, we're going to import an SVG file and create a 3D printable model from it. So the first thing we'll do is click New, 3D Design. And if you click Import, you notice that Tinkercad supports STL and OBJ files, which are virtual 3D model files, but it also supports SVG, which is a two-dimensional image file. So you can use any graphics program that you might be familiar with to create an SVG file, but there are other ways that you can find SVG files to use as well. We'll close this window and go to Google, and let's search for SVG cat. We'll look for a cat image. Click on Images, and you can see oftentimes SVGs just look like black silhouette type shapes, and that's kind of what we're looking for. Looking at the options, Etsy, probably have to purchase those, but this one here is from Wikimedia Commons, so that's free to use. I'll click on that image and then click Visit, and there's the image. I'll click Open in Media Viewer, and from here I can download the SVG file. But as a librarian, I need to point out that you should give attribution to the author if you use somebody else's image. If you don't know how to do that, then you can just click down below, and the attribution statement is already there for you. All you have to do is copy it to a clipboard and paste it in. So if you were to use this image somewhere else, you should give attribution to the original creator. So it's best to create your own images if you can. But creating SVG files is an entirely different lesson, so we'll just use this image as an example for now. I'll click to download. Then if I look in my downloads folder, you can see the cat image is an SVG file. Back in Tinkercad, I'll click Import, choose File, go to my downloads and find the cat silhouette that I just downloaded and click Upload. Now here I have the option of setting dimensions, and I certainly don't want this to be 345 millimeters long. That's large. So I'm going to, let's say I want it to be about 20 millimeters wide. All I'm going to do is set that one dimension, and the length will automatically adjust proportionally. I'll tap Enter, and you can see that the length was adjusted automatically. And now I'll click Import. And there it is. You can see that all Tinkercad did was bring in that file and give it some dimensionality. And you're not fixed with that. You can change the dimension as you wish. So from this point, you could simply click Export and slice and print. But let's do a little bit of manipulation of the file that we have. So I'm going to make a bookmark. So let's say I make that 0.6 thin. Okay. I'll look at it from the top. Orthographic view, so I'm looking straight down. I'll tap the F key to zoom in, and that's fine, but for some reason I think I want to flip it so it looks like it's looking at the spine of the book when it's in place in the book. All right, let's see, I'd also like to maybe add some eyes there, some eye cutouts. So I'll bring out a cylinder, make it smooth, decrease the size to, let's say, 3 by 3. Well, that's a big eye. Let's say I select the cat, hold down the Shift key, click one of the corner boxes and make it a little bigger. Click off the model, click on the eye, still pretty big. So I'll zoom in. Let's say I make that 2 by 2 instead. And I'll use the arrow keys to move it around. It's jumping a little too far on the snap grid, so I'm going to go down to the bottom right and change the snap grid to 0.1. Now I can more finely tune the location of that cylinder. I'll click Duplicate and then move the duplicate out down a little because the head is tilted, so the eyes would be as well. How does that look? Roughly okay. Select one cylinder, hold down the Shift key and select the other, then I can nudge them both over a little bit. Okay, I'll call that good. Okay, now I can group those shapes and join them together. That looks okay. I did resize the cat though, so I want to make sure I'm going to check the height again and put that back down to 0.6. Look at it from the top. Okay, so that'll be the top of my bookmark. Now for the bottom part, I'll drag out a cube and I'm going to round the corners of the cube. Let's see about that. Let's make it an even 6. So I'll click on the dimension there, type in the number 6 and hit return. So it's a nice even number. Okay, that looks fine. Now, when you do that, all of the edges of the cube are rounded as well as the corners. So I don't want these rounded edges here because when it prints, I would need supports on the bottom piece there. Plus, I just want a flat bookmark. So what I'm going to do is cut off the top and the bottom of the cube. So I'll drag this out, this whole shape, and make sure that it's large enough to encompass the entire cube. I'll look at it straight from the front, and I'll bring it down, let's say about 7. I know that the radius of this shape is 6, so I'm going to make sure to get the entire radius, so I will make that height 7. Now I will duplicate the whole shape and drag it up and make sure that I chop off the top as well. So now I can select all of those shapes and group them, and I'm left with a nice flat piece. I'll tap the D key to drop it to the work plane and change the height to 0.6. And now I'll look at this from the top. So I can move this up under here. Let's see, I'd like that a little wider. So what about 25 millimeters? And I'll nudge that over so it looks like the cat is resting on top there with his tail kind of going over the edge. That looks good. Now I could just stretch the red shape down to make the bottom part of the bookmark, but that's a lot of material and I'd like it to be mostly hollow. So what I'm going to do is cut out that middle piece. So I drag out a whole cube. The radius was 6. The length was 25. Let's say I would like these sides to be 3 millimeters thick, so I need to subtract 6 from the top and the bottom. 25 minus 6 is 19, and 20 minus 6 is 14. The next thing I need to do is to cut off the top and the bottom here, so I'm going to make this solid temporarily. Come down with a hollow cube, look at it from the front, change the height to 7, duplicate, drag up to the top, then just select these 3 shapes, group. Now this is hovering in the air, so I'll tap the D key on the keyboard to drop the shape to the bed, turn it back into a hole, look at it from the top, move this up here, group those 2 rounded squares, click Align, make sure they're aligned, and they are because the middle aligning dots are grayed out. So now we'll stretch this shape out. So let's say we want it to be 120 millimeters long. There we go. And that had the effect of stretching this top piece out too, but that's fine. I actually like that. It makes the bookmark a little more rigid. If it were thin all the way around, it would be very flimsy. So now I'll try selecting everything and grouping. Focus in, examine it. Everything is 0.6, that's good. I'm going to ungroup just to double check everything. This one is 0.6, the cat is 0.6. If I focus in on the cat, I'm a little concerned that when I grouped everything, you could still see the line joining the cat and the bookmark. I'll redo that so you can see it. You see how there's a line here? Sometimes that indicates that there's just little space between those two objects. And also, as I'm looking at it again, I can see that the foot is not touching any longer. When I stretch that shape out, it brought this rounded corner down below the foot. And also there's a little awkward piece here where the back foot is. So I'm going to ungroup and click on the cat and move it down so that it's definitely overlapping with the bottom part of the bookmark here. Now I'll select everything on the screen and group again. And that line is still showing, so that might indicate that all of these pieces are not flat on the bed. So I'm going to ungroup everything again, and then one by one I'm going to select and tap the D key to drop everything to the bed. Now I'll select everything and group. So I can still see these lines here, but the two models should definitely be joined at this point. I'm not sure exactly why that's the case. Again, if I ungroup everything and I just double check the height of the red piece of the bookmark, that's 0.6, and I'll tap the D key on my keyboard to make sure that it's flat on the surface of the work plane, and I'll check the cat height is 0.6 also, and I'll tap D to make sure it's down flat, Command A to select everything, group, and that line is still showing. So it's peculiar. That's not always the case. This should look like one solid piece, but they're definitely the same height and they're definitely joined. You can clearly see that they overlap. So this should print just fine. I'll give it a name and then export as STL and print. Now, if you have another SVG file that you would rather use, go ahead and do that. Or if you would like to import the cat SVG file as I did, but make something else, for instance, I could undo this, copy, and move my copy over. I'll go ahead and regroup those. And for this, let's say I just want to have sort of a magnet that I can put on my refrigerator. I'll smooth out the cylinder. I'll make the cat, say, 2 millimeters tall, and I'll make the cylinder 1 millimeter tall. Move this over, and I can put this behind. If I want the eyes to be sort of glowing, I can put the circle down like this, and then group those shapes. So now when it prints, the cat will be raised slightly from that background. So you could print it and then stick a magnet on the back and use it as a fridge magnet. So whatever you prefer. The purpose of the exercise is to give you some practice importing SVG files, manipulating them, and then exporting them and printing them.